So we get to the discussion, which is equally important, and what we are having in the country coming back home. And it all pertains the developments that regard the referendum bill, which is a real scare for the big three, President Kenyatta, DP William Ruto, and the opposition chief Raila Odinga. The referendum push to test the party loyalty, great divide, trying times for party leaders as Jubilee and ODM party members of the National Assembly, Senate and the county assemblies now clash over the Punguza Mizigo referendum push. That will be the subject to discussion here on the roundtable. Good morning, Dr. Juma.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. I do appreciate your time. Asante sana. And Andrew Franklin, on his next to him, is a consultant and, of course, political commentator on development in the country. Gentlemen, I do appreciate your time. And Linda, of course, is my able co-host here on this show. So starting off with you, Dr. It appears that we are seeing some bit of political development in the theater of our political house. Looking at the development and what Ekuru Court perhaps is trying to push as being the third party, placing himself strategically as perhaps the third political force in the country. Can the proposed changes by the Ekuru Court bill, which seeks to change, among many other things, make the Senate, the upper house, generate the political steam required to turn around a legacy of a political establishment tarnished by allegations of corruption, patronage, and incompetence? Well,
it's a very interesting time and a very interesting approach that the court has taken, and it's a very tricky move for those who do not understand the full picture, because our court seems to appeal more to Senate and the county assemblies. And he structured his bill such that it is going straight to the county assemblies. And if we manage to get a support of 50+1 from the county assemblies,
so there's 24 counties.
Yes, then definitely the bill will move to the Senate. And if the Senate approves the bill and it goes to the National Assembly, if the National Assembly approves or rejects the bill, it goes to the people. And I think that exposes the National Assembly in one way or the other. And looking at the bill also is actually not friendly to the National Assembly, and it is actually striking the National Assembly below the belt at a moment when National Assembly was playing an upper hand game with the Senate, because today I know the Senate are seeking court interpretation on roles and functions of Senate vis-a-vis the functions of National Assembly. So yes, it's a critical situation in terms of how to balance, because also when you look at a court's proposal vis-a-vis the BBI proposal, because BBI is expanding the executive and taking away from the devolution. Our court is expanding devolution and minimizing the executive. So in other words, again, our court's proposal actually is opposite BBI,
the BBI,
which is a very interesting equation. Now, if a court's proposal is opposite BBI, then it brings a very proper, an interesting political scenario where the masters of BBI, which as we have been experiencing, the occurrences and the composition of BBI and the challenges. You remember even BBI composition was taken challenged in court on its legality, and of course the impunity around how BBI was set has been a challenge and a question to party leaders like us, and a lack of inclusivity and high-handedness and all the cards that they were playing in secrecy were geared towards benefiting specific persons who actually have been the individuals who have taken captive our economy, taken captive all the government arms, and they're using them for personal individual gains. And to me, I think if we can get an front and challenge this, then yes, it will be of extreme benefit to the citizen.
Okay.
But the question lies.
Did he craft in a manner that then, Dr. Juma, that this bill perhaps is focusing more on the taxpayer and appears perhaps revealing or telling more about the waning popularity of the deep state and the political establishment? Well,
that is now the challenge of whether is it of benefit to the citizen Or is it another affront that will also benefit a specific political class? Because, when you're discussing constitution, and I raised this before, when we are raising the matters of constitution, there is also an aspect of constitutionalism. Because this constitution, as we talk about it, heavily we borrowed a lot from South Africa, whose constitution seems to be working very well.
Which court disputed the other time he was here. Remember?
Well, if he dispute, then I can take him back to
with
class.
facts, though.
Of course. In the world, we have about 5 different models of constitution. One, we have constitution as a frame of government, the type that the United States of America type. Normally, it is the aliens in a foreign land framing themselves and governing themselves. And then also we have a constitution as a code. Most of the time is very rigid, and it's all about, it's not open to the open society, the German type of the constitution. And then we also have constitution as a revolutionary manifesto, the one we're having in Cuba, the one we're having in Libya, and is a constitution that is normally established by those who went through coups and formed their government. And then the last two is the constitution as a political ideal, which was actually a residue that was left by the colonialists in their colony.
Okay.
And the last one is a constitution as a modern adaptation to ancient tradition, the Israel type, the British type, which normally actually is not a written constitution. And imagine some people do not have a constitution that is written.
British.
They have a
And
written
yet,
constitution.
and they are following the spirit of constitutionalism in these countries. You cannot compare to those who even have written constitutions. So when you're talking about constitutionalism, whether you write constitution to what extent and you do not have the spirit of constitutionalism, even these same individuals who are asking us for new constitution, if you look at them, the impunity by which they violated this constitution that they are rejecting, the way they've refused to follow it, all these individuals, actually, even if you gave them another one from heaven, will they really follow if they lack constitutionalism? No, those are the questions we should now bridge the gap and and guide us in understanding whether the constitution they are fighting is a good or a bad constitution. And court should be told that that model that we're having is constitution as a political ideal, which is the same as the South African. So this model and the Kenyan model are the similar, and they borrow from each other, they reflect, they mirror each other.
Okay.
So if
but Doc, constitutions literally, okay, let's just try and look in Andrew. In as much as maybe we would say it's working in South Africa, most of the times, that's why we say we have these technocrats who are put aboard to sit down and look at the issues that you face as a country as they get to craft this constitution, which in a way, we would, picking from your words, would say that we failed, because then again, if we copy-pasted or we picked from a different country to ours, then it's a clear indication that the issues that they are facing, in as much as it's Africa, are probably totally different from what the people of Kenya are facing. So this constitution then could not come as a solution to the issues of the people of Kenya. But looking...
So those were our concerns when we were rendering our submission to the committee of experts when we were reviewing the constitution. One, we needed to have considered our most relevant model. And our most relevant model was it among the model, the 5 types that I've mentioned, which one would have been most viable for us? We refused to pick the right model. We picked the wrong model, and that is why we'll never get it right. Even if we try to amend this or correct it out, it will never be relevant to this geographical location.
With the excitement that we're picking this with, the excitement that we're picking the Punguza Mizigo, which is now what everyone is talking about. As people of Kenya sort of feel like, yes, this is basically what is going to bring in answers to key issues that we're having economically, which will certainly expect you as the analyst to tell us whether they're going to address the question of economy, the question of course, electoral justice or injustice at some point in time, whether it's going to address the issues that we are facing as a people, the high cost of living and everything. And looking at this, just going back to different countries and even our very own countries, we've seen people coming about and crafting laws at that particular time because they suit them best. if there's anybody who has an ambition to be a politician, they would tell you for sure they would not want to go by this, because then again they know in a very huge way it's going to curtail them. And I think that's why most of the members of parliament are not in agreement to the Punguzo Mizigo. So if this our court team is pushing on this and ensuring that at least this one is going to be a success, is there a point then they're going to take the Kenyans back towards trying to now coming up in, with other ways of crafting the laws to a point whereby it's going to solve them, is going to suit them at that particular time? Because when you look at this, and just take the simplest example of what happened in Uganda. At some point in time, there are some lawmakers who were arguing that let's focus on getting term limits, and some of them disagreed. They say no, there's no point of us getting term limits. Then it reaches a point whereby Museveni is not exiting power, and then the question is, we told you get term limits. That would have been an easy way of us telling Museveni out. But then now today you're talking about us getting an age limit simply because you want to exit, to ensure that Museveni is out of power. So sometimes we come up with laws, we craft laws that suit us at that particular time. Then years later, we want to change it again. So how is this really going to address the issue of the common mwananchi? How is it of the benefit of the mwananchi?
Oh, gee, thank you, Linda. Kenya could end up without a functioning constitution. Kenya could end up with a constitutional crisis whose consequences are dire. Dr. Okad has managed to beat the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force to the punch somehow. His initiative, the Thirdway Alliance referendum, combines fealty to devolution with a populist approach to cutting back on the allowances, on the expenses of the executive, of national government, of parliament, reducing the number of parliamentarians, none of whom do themselves any favors by accepting, for example, illegal house allowance payments. Sitting here and saying, well, I'm an employee of
state
parliament,
official,
and I'm enjoying spending my money. Thank you very much. That was 3 weeks ago, I believe. You see, what we're hearing now is a pushback from the politicians, but I think in many ways, whether this, Yashpal Gai, the father of the Constitution, has pointed out that much of Kenya's 2010 Constitution was borrowed or even in the spirit of the South African Constitution. And much of that is based on the reality of historical injustices in this country since independence. You could say from before independence, but that's really is not a good baseline, because by definition, colonialism is not a just system. And also a country that has had 50 some odd years now, almost 56 years of independence, should be reconciling people and resolving historical injustices, especially since Kenya has never had a civil war. We've never had a successful military coup. In fact, not even a close to acceptable military coup in 1982. I've said that what's needed to be done is to implement the Constitution that was passed in a referendum on the 4th of August, 2009.
Promulgated on 27th.
Promulgated on the 27th of August, 2010. I'm sorry, 4th March 2010, then promulgated on the 27th of August 2010. We need to implement the letter and the spirit of that Constitution, as well as all the subsidiary legislation that has been enacted since, to give life or to operationalize that Constitution. Even in the notion of somehow timelines now, whether we have the Thirdway Alliance referendum, how long that's going to take to grind through the various counties,